Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 251 of Real Blend, a podcast that still can't believe the top secret plot twist. Jonathan Majors plays Clubber Lang's son in Creed 3. Sorry to ruin it for everybody, but yeah, it's a big one. On this week's show, Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut, Creed 3, is hitting theaters. By the way, that's not true. I just want to let everybody, know before they went to this episode that I didn't just ruin Creed 3 for them. We will have a review for the movie later on in the episode, though, as well as our box office predictions for the film. And we're going to talk a little box office results with Ant-Man 3 and Cocaine Bear and some of the things that have been settling in before we get to the huge March releases. Let's get into the show. Let's introduce the boys, starting with Kevin McCarthy, Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. Hello, Kev. How are you,
Hi,
sir?
Sean, Jacob, Gabriel. Good to see you guys. We're all fresh back from Los Angeles from Shazam 2, and we will
we're about to be fresh back there in less than 24 hours.
And we'll be having a guest on our show from Shazam 2. So make sure you stay tuned for the week of March 17th.
This is really cool, is that people now direct message me on social media to ask which guests we're going to have upcoming. Like, people seem invested in who we're getting.
My mom loves to DM you, by the way. She's very on top. No joke, by the way. This I know I make a joke about my mom and dad all the time listening to our show. My mom and dad text me every Friday night now with a photo of their television of our show, and they text me jokes throughout the week about things that we've said, like kid and pop and all this. Like my parents are they're genuinely like listening. So I know for a fact that when this episode drops on Friday, that my parents will be spending their Friday night with an hour and a half of our show. So hi, Mom. Hi, Dad.
You guys.
Yeah, thank you. And they text me all the time about you guys. They say, tell the guys I love them and say hi. So,
oh my God.
On the flip side, I cannot emphasize enough how much my parents do not listen to this show.
Thanks, Jake.
They're still listening to. They still listen to Real Talk, though, right? They just think it's you.
They just didn't. They were stuck on awards blend. They don't understand why we stopped.
Yeah. Jan and Keith are. They need to get on that.
Jake Hamilton of Fox 32. Wait, Fox 32 in Chicago. I've only done this 251 times.
I was about to say, what number episode is this?
Yeah, I know. It's been a long time. I'll tell you something that's really sweet while we're talking about parents as well, too. My mom is trying to read With Great Power, and she doesn't know a single thing about Spider-Man or movies. So I try to think often about like how she is trying to process what is going on in that book, because it's not really for casual fans.
Has she talked to you about it? Like how she's feeling about it as she goes through?
Yeah, she does. She'll come in and sort of let me know that, like, you know, this sort of story was interesting, but she doesn't know like Andrew Garfield or Tom Holland. She doesn't know who these people are. So I guess they're like fictional characters to her now, and she's following their journey.
Fictional characters.
If you are like Kevin's parents and you're watching us on YouTube, hello. Thank you for joining us here. Head down, give us a like and a subscribe while you're here. Join us here each week. We have a notification crew that chimes in not only on Friday mornings, but then we have a West Coast notification crew that chimes in around noon to 1 Eastern Standard Time. A lot more engagement in the comments. Thank you guys, everybody, for posting down there. Sometimes we even go in and weigh in and say hello back. If you want to join us in the video form, head to youtube.com/RealBlend Podcast. Of course, we're available all the different places you get your podcast needs met. Sign up for Real Blend Premium to get additional content from the show. That's a new episode every Monday, as well as a newsletter from me and an ad-free version of the show. You guys know the drill by this point. Go to the description where you're listening right now for information on how you can sign up for the Real Blend Premium. All right, let's get into some talking points for the week, starting with box office conversation and the fact that Ant-Man and the Wasp managed to hold off Cocaine Bear. It made $32 million to Cocaine Bear's 23.3, so closer than certainly I thought it was going to be. That pushes Ant-Man 3 to $364 million worldwide. And Jake, do you think that's a good number for a Marvel Studios film that came out in February with very little competition?
No. And here's what I'm going to say why is because I really feel like for Marvel, the win doesn't come from week 1, but week 2. because it has established over the last 15 plus years that there is an automatic built-in group of people who are going to go see the film no matter what it is. Now that built-in group can sort of expand, here or there, but for the most part, like, it knows it's going to do a certain amount of well. The big question is how much a Marvel film bleeds beyond the people who are going to see a Marvel film no matter what into the general audience of, like, I'm just going to go see a movie, and the movie I'm just going to go see just so happens to be a Marvel movie. And I think that Weekend 2 was a very clear indicator that outside of the people who are on the bandwagon, who are going to go see a Marvel movie no matter what, that Ant-Man had very little appeal to anyone who's not drinking the Marvel Kool-Aid as of right now. So I'm going to go with 70%. One of the biggest drops for a superhero movie that crossed over 100, opened to more than $100 million. I'm sorry, you can't justify that number other than this movie doesn't appeal to anyone who's not a Marvel fan. I don't know how you say that number in any other way.
Kev, you think the reviews hurt it? Because the reviews were pretty harsh.
Well, I think obviously the reviews are part of it. I also feel like it's genuine Marvel fatigue. I feel like we are in a space now where I was talking to someone the other day, and I won't say specifically who it was because I think it was more off record than anything else. But I think in
Kevin
terms.
Feige.
Yeah, it was Kevin Feige. No, but in terms of the industry right now, I'm in a headspace where I'm way more excited about DC than I am Marvel, only because I'm not sure where DC's going other than what James Gunn has already pointed out to us. Now, there's two things that are important here. One, you mentioned the 70% or 69% drop. I was trying to figure out, this is the second largest drop for a Marvel film in the MCU. What is the first? I was trying to research this. I may have been. I keep reading articles that it's the second worst, but I can't see what the first one is. If Gabe can look that up.
But you effort that.
Yeah, please. Because I kept, that was the headline on Monday when the article.
It feels like Eternals. I think Eternals got a.
I don't know.
But also keep in mind, like, Spider-Man No Way Home had a pretty substantial drop, and that's coming off of like
60-something% is kind of average for a major.
Yeah, but there's a giant difference between 60% and 70%.
Sure. Yeah.
It's 10% difference.
And thank you. And 70% of not a huge opening is worse. Like Spider-Man opened to gigantic numbers.
Yeah.
A 60% drop still put you at a pretty good number. So.
60% off of 300 is a lot different than 70% off of 100.
Well, I think one of the things that's fascinating, it's funny, I'm trying to figure out what the first one is because when the headlines came out that it was the second worst, I'm like, what's the first? And then
would it have been a Thor film? Would it have been a Love and Thunder?
I think Love and Thunder is right after it. I think Love and Thunder is the third. I could be wrong. I wanted to clarify, but regardless, to answer your question, it's not a good number. I think it actually shows. It's not. I don't even think it's really a statement about Ant-Man. I think it's a statement about Marvel. Do you really think that? I'm sorry to interrupt, but like to your point, do you think? I don't think Guardians is going to have that kind of drop. I think it'll have a higher number and a lower drop. How do you explain Thor?
Well, here's the thing. I think Marvel is still a little bit project specific. I don't think it's a blanket every Marvel movie is going to do well. And for Guardians, to answer your question,
Guardians will do well.
There's something special about that movie because it's James Gunn coming back to finish that franchise, and they are beloved characters.
Correct.
But I don't think the Marvels is going to do very well. I think the Marvels is going to fall in that Ant-Man, Thor, Love and Thunder range because there isn't a ton of love for that character necessarily. Yeah. And there isn't a ton of hype. There wasn't a ton of hype around Ant-Man necessarily.
Sure.
Even though Paul Rudd is, people like Paul Rudd in the role, but it's not like you're going crazy about, the conclusion of a franchise the way that Guardians is. So
I think
Guardians will do really well.
Gabe might have an answer. Yes, Gabe.
So what I'm reading, this was from a few days ago, is that it's actually the worst. It's number one at 69% drop. Second is Black Widow's 67.8, and then Love and Thunder's 67. And then I believe this is fourth, Eternals at 62.
Okay, so all right, so that's an interesting.
I don't have an actual chart in front of me, but this is from an article that I'm looking.
This is an interesting landscape then to look at. So Thor, I would argue, is a more popular character than Ant-Man. I mean, I don't think that's
Absolutely.
Clearly right. So
Absolutely.
And he's one of the OGs. Well,
right, so
Ant-Man is too, but way more so than Ant-Man is.
But going back to my point, then, so if there's not Marvel fatigue, why is there that drop on a Thor film?
Well, that Thor film wasn't really good. I mean, I liked it,
but it's still a Thor movie.
Kind of shit on it.
It's still a Thor movie, though. Yeah. I mean, I guess my point being is that, like, yes, Guardians will do well, and I think Guardians will not have the drop that this. Again, we're talking about the future here. I see Guardians getting great reviews. I see Guardians not having a drop like this.
Well, here's the difference, though. Percentage is you know, obviously still a big deal, but Quantumania opened to 104 million, where Thor: Love and Thunder opened to 144.
Okay,
so it had a lot more to drop. Like it probably dropped that much, and then still more people went and saw it.
Yeah, but but it isn't. This is also the biggest Ant-Man opening. Just so we'll clarify that in terms of domestic, from what I understand,
of the franchise.
And so it's important to note that I think I'm not trying to make a blanket statement that there's a general Marvel fatigue. I do believe. Now, I will say this, and I walk around my newsroom and people talk to me about Marvel all the time. The sense that I'm getting from audiences who are just going to see Marvel films is they feel fatigued by Marvel. And I think this goes back to the point I was making on one of our shows last week about the stakes. And I feel like this idea that there's no Quantumania basically starts and ends exactly at the same place. And so I don't know what that movie did for me, like in terms of phase 5 and making me more excited to go forward. That's the point I'm making, is I think audiences are starting to gather that they can walk into one of these movies and it's just going to be, there's no actual emotional stakes for this anymore. Like, it just feels like it's just money being printed, and I don't feel that the art is there as much. It feels too business and commercial.
Somebody brought up this point as well too, and it speaks to a little bit what you're saying. The multiverse saga that we're currently in under Marvel has set up a situation that if anyone dies, you can bring back countless versions of them.
That's the point I was making. Yes, it's like if Ant-Man, again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but like, let's say, for example, like at the end of Ant-Man, Wasp, everyone died.
Yeah.
The next, in my head, I would just go, oh, well, they'll just be back through another window of et cetera. And like, yeah, I don't want to say anything spoilery here, but
I want to ask. I want to ask while we're discussing box office, which we'll actually add this Ant-Man to our tier list in a little bit. So maybe we'll discuss Ant-Man 3 a little bit more. But I want to ask you guys: do you think that it crosses 200 million domestic? It's at 160.
Yes,
right now, almost.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think it'll cross 500 million global though.
364. It's got to get to 500 million. It did. I don't know if it's opened in China yet. I know that's a huge market and it's getting China, but I don't know.
I think that's, I don't know. I mean, the competition between now and I guess John Wick would be the next. Well, I guess Shazam's a big one. Obviously, March 17th. I know we got to keep going, but Shazam's
a big one.
I do want to point out Cocaine Bear, because I know this is we're discussing the box office here, and I think
and I want to get to that.
It's important to note this because Cocaine Bear, I believe, I want to say the budget was somewhere around.
I saw 30 to 35 was what
30 to 35. Yeah, and by the way, sometimes on the show, if you hear me questioning things or us questioning things, we're just trying to get things right. But in terms of the Cocaine Bear box office and the amount of money that made, that's an R-rated original film. Obviously, it's based on inspired by true events.
With cocaine in the title.
And Elizabeth Banks even told me this, which I thought was really interesting. Their marketing was limited, but the limitations actually made it grassroots, which is really cool. Like Elizabeth Banks told me they couldn't put their trailer on Apple trailers because it had the word cocaine in it. And I remember saying to her, I was like, but actually you ended up benefiting from that because the word of mouth calling your film, because that was the whole thing, was like, do we call it Cocaine Bear and limit our reach? But if you're driving around LA and you see a billboard for that, it's, you're going to text your friends immediately, dude, what the heck is Cocaine Bear? And then boom. And then everyone in my newsroom, dude, this was actually really interesting. I'm glad we're talking about box office. So a lot of people that work in my newsroom don't go to the theaters a lot. I mean, they go for Top Gun, they go for Avatar, they go for these big ones. But then there's every once in a while, there's one that randomly just becomes interesting to everybody in my newsroom. My weatherman and one of my floor directors went out this weekend to go see Cocaine Bear in theaters, and neither of them went and saw Quantumania. Now, I'm not saying do with that what you want to do with that, I mean, information, but I think it just starts to show you that there's an interesting marketing element to what's going on with Universal and these original films that they're doing. I mean, they're just crushing it. Black Phone, I know Smile was Paramount, but they're these one-off, like, interesting, original, strange ideas are just capturing.
It doesn't have to be a franchise all the time,
right? Yeah. And that's a really cool thing
I think
to see.
I think that's a lesson that the industry has constantly learned, which is that audiences, to reduce it down to the most vague thing possible, like things that are fresh, that feel new, that feel original. And even though Marvel was based on Marvel IP, the
felt
MCU
fresh.
Was new. Yeah, the MCU was original, like and that sustained that for a long time. Whereas now, to the larger point, maybe getting
but I want to, while we're talking about weekend drops, I do think Cocaine Bear is going to have a big one.
Of course it will.
Because I think the novelty of seeing it, like it's front loaded, right? People who are vaguely interested in seeing something unique like that are going to go opening weekend.
But it did bigger than I think anyone thought, though. I think it did bigger than anyone thought it would do. And I think, by the time it gets to, we're talking, okay, so if the budget is 30 to 35, let's be reasonable, and let's say they probably got a clear 50, 60, right? With P&A and all the advertising, whatever it would be. People, when you say a budget of a movie, you got to add on all the different promotions and commercials and everything. Cocaine Bear is going to be green for sure. I mean, once that, I mean,
I think that its opening weekend is a good indication of not its legs at the box office, but
the
that
VOD.
there are going to be there are going to be a lot of people who are interested in watching it on VOD.
Yeah.
That many people were interested to see it.
And dude,
absolutely.
Like, honestly, and like, so as a consumer, I'll just be completely transparent here. I mean, what I do for a living is we obviously go to the movies a lot. We have to see screenings a lot, and there are certain films we can't get to. There's certain films they send screeners for. Sometimes the screeners don't work. So when I covered Plane, my screener expired like halfway through the film, so I wasn't able to finish it. And I was just sitting in my apartment one day, and I went on iTunes. It was $20 to rent the film, and I clicked rent.
Available right now?
Yeah, wow. And I rented it, and I had a blast. I thought it was amazing. Now, I would love to have seen it in the theater, don't get me wrong, but that $20 that I spent on that ticket goes right, I mean, I don't know the percentage of where it goes into, but they're making that money. So to Gabe's point about Cocaine Bear, let it continue in theaters, probably do a couple more weeks. I bet you it's on VOD right 3 weeks from now, probably.
$20? Does $20 mean you own it or you watched it once?
So that's how they get you, and I think it's actually smart. You can rent it for $19.99. Now remember, so there's different tiers of rental. So if it's out for a while, it's $5.99. Like I rented Triangle of Sadness recently, and that's in theaters still, but that was $5.99 to rent. Plane gives you the option of $19.99 to rent or $24.99 to buy. And I clicked buy because I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I mean, for an extra
$5,
$4.99, I was like, I mean, I'll watch it again.
Renting it for $20. For
I know.
$5, you can keep it. It feels a little opulent to be like.
So, and they know, like Kevin said, they know exactly. There was an entire meeting about like $5 extra dollars. Yeah.
And so, dude, so the next day, I mean, I'm using this as an example of what Gabe's point is about VOD. So I watched Plane. The next morning, I go into my station, and I know that my news director is a big action film fan. He loves like these like the 80s, 90s, like the B action films, the ones that are just like you turn your brain off, just kind of have fun with it. I was like, dude, you got to watch this movie. It's right up your alley. It's 95 minutes. It's called Plane. Mike Coulter's great in it. Everyone's great. Next day, him and his wife logged on, spent $20 and watched it. And the way I justified it to him, I was like, dude, think about it this way. $10 a ticket. It's like going to the movies. And again, I'm using that as a chain of events because then my other news director now wants to watch it because of that conversation. So you're talking about $20 plus $20. That's $60 between three people. And that's going to continue adding up. So these studios, like with films like Cocaine Bear, they'll clear a good amount in theaters. There's a lot going on those iTunes purchases. There's a lot happening there. Gabe, do you know if that factors at all into box office?
No, it would be home video.
Okay, but like, so why don't we have a split? Nowadays, I feel like we should be talking about that a little more. Like how much money did Top Gun make on VOD? It must have made millions.
Movies were making way more on VOD or on video back in the day.
Yeah,
that was always it was never a part of box office, and home video was like an actual market. Like
but this is different though that we have movies that are playing in theaters while they're here in our homes. So that's why it's different. Yeah,
it's a little different, but it's not.
It's not the same.
It's not the box office. Like like it's not reflected. I think the box office is a tool for people to sort of
gauge how many people go.
It's very strictly about getting out of your house, going to a different building and sitting down with strangers and watch like that. Like the purchase of that ticket says a lot about what it took to get you there
100%.
versus. So I think those are always going to be separate because it's a metric that sort of defines one aspect of the business versus
how much money did I would love to.
To your point though, that has always like I think that's a great. I don't know what those numbers are. I would be curious.
I would love to know Top Gun's VOD.
I would love to know how healthy the VOD is in general in the industry because home video was a very like sustainable and viable lucrative is the word I'm looking for. Thank you. Part of the business that's why everyone freaked out when the internet came along, because there were movies that they spent tens of millions of dollars to make going, not going to make much knowing it's not, they're not going to sell tickets at the box office, but we're going to sell a bunch of DVDs or VHS and some merchandise. Like they were putting budget into movies that weren't straight to home video, but they knew we were going to make their money in home video. And that
I just got to factor in too that like it used to be you'd buy the DVD, but now things go right to streaming. Like you say Top Gun. Top Gun's a bad example because Cruise fought so hard to keep it in theaters, so it didn't go to VOD as quickly as it would have. But
when it went to VOD, I'm telling you, I would love to see those numbers. If anybody listening to our show right now,
how quickly did it hit?
It was in theaters for like months before it went to VOD. But when VOD hit though, it was it was a big deal when it hit VOD because the reason why I know that is my parents don't go to theaters, so they were waiting for that rental. That's right.
And then how quickly did it hit Paramount Plus? Right, like it was way
later.
Yeah,
it was on VOD for like I want to say a month or so. I could be wrong.
That was Cruise holding on to that.
Again, that's an anomaly. That is an anomaly.
If you get the chance, there's a great like Matt Damon interview moment where someone asks him why movies like Good Will Hunting don't exist anymore. And he basically chalks it up to the absence of the video market. And he talks about Behind the Candelabra and how like the money worked on stuff like that. And he was like, those sort of middle tier movies were never meant to make money in theaters, but you could always count on banking whenever they hit a blockbuster shelf. You take away that money and you can't justify the expense on a movie like a Good Will Hunting or a Behind the Candelabra anymore.
Okay, so I know we got to move on, but I just found this. I thought this was interesting real quick. This is from the numbers.com, so take that with what you will.
They kind of replaced box office for a lot of people. It's a good site.
Okay, so we'll call the numbers.com. So it made $1.48 billion at the box office. According to this website, estimated DVD sales are 7 million, estimated Blu-ray sales are 17 million, estimated domestic video sales total is 25 million. 25 million just in the physical discs. Okay, think about so however much money more it made on VOD before it came out on physical disc. I mean, damn, man, that's a lot of money, man. That's more money than Fableman's made in an entire theatrical run. It made in home video.
Oh, Top Gun's good. All right, let's get to the
Fableman's is amazing.
I know. I'm just stirring the pot. We're gonna add Ant-Man 3 to the Marvel tier list, the ongoing Marvel tier list, and this is gonna be Gabe and Kevin and myself figuring out where it fits because Jake hasn't seen it. And I guess, can I say, Jake, that you don't intend to see it? Can I throw that out there?
You'll see it eventually.
I'll see it eventually, but it sort of falls in that umbrella. We talk a lot about how, like, movies are our job, but whenever we miss something, whether it be because we missed a local screening or we missed a junket, and particularly because that combined and coupled with the fact that I just don't really give a shit, it makes it hard for me to take the initiative to go out to my local theater and fork over $15 to $20 for a movie that I genuinely know that I'm probably just going to go meh at. So I'll get around to seeing it. It'll be on Disney Plus in about 18 minutes, and then I'm sure I'll come back and be like,
Well, if you're watching at home, you can see our beautiful ugly beast of a tier list. Audio listeners, I recommend pulling up the YouTube feed for this segment because it is helpful to see this mess that we've put together over the last year or so that we've been doing this. But let's get right into it because we have a tight schedule today. For me, you can listen to our review in our review episodes. We won't dive completely back into Ant-Man 3. And I will start us off, and I'm curious where you guys are at, given how you felt a couple weeks ago when we reviewed it. I couldn't put this above a C, and it's trending C- for me. I don't necessarily feel like putting it in D. It has a lot of problems that I wouldn't be completely upset about a D, but I felt like it had enough fun things that I liked that a C sounds right in the Marvel universe.
I am also with you on the C trending C-. And I think C is probably where I'm most leaning towards, even before you said your rating. And again, I'm not going to rehash what we said last week, but, you know, it is a film. I'm a huge Ant-Man fan. Major Ant-Man. First Ant-Man is one of my favorite movies in the MCU. I just thought it was so inventive and so interestingly well done, and Michael Pena was so great and everybody was great in it. But this was just disappointing to me, and just in a two sentences, I just don't feel like there were any stakes. And I thought that Jonathan Majors, while he was great as Kang, I did want to point this out because I botched this last week, and Sean, I wanted you to clarify this for me as well. I kept saying that like he played a better version of Kang in Loki, but that was actually not Kang, right? That was
it's Kang,
they're
but
all
it's
variants.
They're all
I know, but what was he called? He was
called He Who Remains.
He Who Remains. So I understand for people who commented,
right, though.
Yeah, but technically speaking, he had not become Kang the Conqueror yet. So
I think the point that I always took you were making, or the point you were making that I always took,
performance, was
that you would prefer the big bad was this characterization, which is true. Like, they are all Kang. They're different versions of Kang. I saw a story where I forget who. I don't think it was maybe a Feige quote or something. They were one of the writers maybe of Quantumania, where they were talking about they deliberately are trying to Thanos Kang at the start of his arc. Like, they don't want him to come in and be Thanos. Like, they're deliberately doing the opposite, and I assume that's all set up for what's to come.
Well, then also
killing him or whatever in Loki and all of that. Yeah.
To take that a step further, I also saw an article where the writer of Quantumania said, I didn't know Kang was going to be the big main villain. So he wrote that entire movie with Kang having no idea that there was like any sort of a long-term setup for this character.
That's
which
funny.
Just like
which actually makes sense
to my
when you
problem
see it.
with like there's such a disconnect. Like, they don't talk, none of the actors know what's going on because they make them pop in and fill. There's just such a disconnect with Marvel, which is why I'm not participating in this tier list.
Also, that's funny, to Jake's point just now, that was just really interesting. I felt that in the movie because, and again, no spoilers, but there's something about the direction they take Kang within Quantumania that felt, it didn't feel like it was solidified as to what it wanted to be. And like, there were like, and you wanted this again, and I get that they're not trying to make him Thanos, but when you're dealing with a villain at that level, who's supposed to be the setup of phase 5 and all these things, there was something inconsistent about the level of what his powers were. We discussed this in the show. We didn't know what his powers were. It felt confused.
I know. We don't need to rehash this conversation because we had this exact
conversation. We're doing a
2
tier
weeks
list.
ago.
I'm just explaining.
No. I'm saying before what I say. I'm also going to repeat what I said a couple weeks ago. But it's the first movie. Like, it's the first movie. Like, it's not just phase 5. Like, in theory, Thanos was the big bad of 3 phases. So it would be kind of exhausting if he was already like fully realized Kang and we understood everything at this point. So I give them the benefit of the doubt of it being whatever it is. Doesn't mean that the movie was as entertaining as it could have been. So C, obviously. Yeah, Sean, you haven't told us where you're at.
I'm in the B tier. If I'm anything, I'm B, trending towards B- because I'm not trending up on it. Okay. But I liked it a lot more than you guys did because I thought the quantum realm ended up being a lot more interesting of a place to explore than I thought it was going to be. Based on the early reaction, I thought it was going to look like really crappy CGI. Like, people coming out of the premiere talked about how miserable it looked, and I didn't think that was the case at all.
I thought it was really fine, yeah.
creative and inventive. And yeah, I liked the new characters that they introduced. I thought they were funny. The people who were part of the rebellion, that were fighting back against Kang, I thought that they were interesting characters. I loved what it did for Michelle Pfeiffer, who I think deserves a lot more to do in these films, and I thought she finally got a lot more to do. I really liked Jonathan Majors, so I give it points for those reasons, but I can't fault the fact Hope Van Dyne has nothing to do necessarily.
I like the idea though that, and I think maybe you said this, Sean, that Michelle Pfeiffer is actually the Wasp in the title Ant-Man and the Wasp, which I hadn't thought about while I was watching it, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense.
But the Bill Murray cameo is funny, I think it had more going for it than it didn't have going for it. But I agree that I think it has problems in the end because I think that there was a different ending. I think that Marvel is coming out of production problems they had to endure because of COVID. And so productions are still suffering from it a bit. And maybe Guardians will be the first one that's completely free of issues. And I do love the fact that Marvel seems to be spreading things out now. Like some of the shows are getting pushed back to next year to maybe give them more time in the production oven so that things look better, and they don't get criticized for these reasons. And again, I know that we aren't supposed to do this, but I look at the films that are on C, and I think that it's significantly better than a few of the ones that are on C, but yet not as good as some of the ones that are on B. So,
right. But again, yes, for people who haven't joined a tier list, it's more of where would you grade it, and then we average it. So it is hard to reflect.
I liked it more. I'd put it in the B realm, but I can't defend it enough if you all are gonna put it in C. And you know what? For the third Ant-Man, that feels okay for me.
And I'll tell you this, and I know we're gonna get to this later in our segment in our show, but after I saw Creed 3 and like the performance that Majors gives there, it's night and day in terms of like. That's
a different movie. That's the Tom Cruise.
What? Night and day. No, but is it in terms of
Creed 3 is night and day reboot.
In terms of like a character being a quote unquote villain and having this ominous aspect to the performance, like I felt way more worried about what was going to happen in Creed 3 than I did about anything in Ant-Man. And I don't know what that says, but so
that is an incredible tease for what's going to come on the other side of this break, which is our Creed 3 reviews. So we'll see you kids on the other side.
All right, getting to this week in movies, or basically your pop culture entertainment, because The Mandalorian Season 3 made its premiere earlier this week. And now, as Kevin sort of alluded to at the beginning of the episode, three of us have been traveling a lot for junkets. And so none of us have had the time to sit down and watch it just yet, but we will catch up with Mando. That's the issue with
a Wednesday morning drop, right?
Well, and Jake was mentioning too, like it kind of feels like it flew under the radar a bit. Like,
yeah.
Wait, I'm being honest. Is it out this week? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's out today.
The first episode.
Wait, it's out today?
Episode.
Today.
Yes.
Like Mandalorian used to be a show for me that like I would wake up early on a work day and watch it. And at this point, there's not even like I wonder what's going to happen from the cliffhanger of season 2, because that was resolved in the middle of Boba Fett.
This goes to what I say all the time. We are in a day and age where we are inundated with too much content. It's and at the end of the day, it's like Mandalorian, Last of Us.
It's good for our profession.
It's good for our profession, but I want to. I do want to clarify this though. Like when you turn your television on and you have 1,000 things to watch and you can't find one thing to watch, that is saying something. It's like opening the Cheesecake Factory menu and like not knowing what to order because there's just many things. No, I love Cheesecake Factory, but dude, that menu is so overwhelming. It's literally like turning a television on or opening Netflix. But the last thing I'll say about this is this. Nothing wrong with a lot of content. It just feels like
nothing wrong with Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah, their mac and cheese balls are amazing. No sponsor. But yeah,
we are not sponsored by Cheesecake Factory.
We are not. But the point I'll make is this:
we could be, guys. Always leave the door open.
Oh my God, we are just like the cast of The Big Bang Theory.
All right, you guys. All right, I'm gonna say this one thing, and then we can move on. You guys joke with me about how I talk about how I love the way Chris Nolan handles certain things about his trailers and being a little more precious and making sure people are at somewhere at a certain point to watch this and that. And I think the reason why I find that so special is because there really is not. Things don't feel as special anymore. Like I'm sitting here on Wednesday, March 1st. And I didn't know Mandalorian dropped today, and I work in this industry, and and I love Mandalorian. It's a show that I'm obsessed with, and I cannot wait to see this season. But as you mentioned, we're traveling. You know, we just got back from Creed 3 and Shazam. We're going to John Wick tomorrow. We're going to Murder Mystery next week. Our heads are in different spaces. But I don't believe that just because we do what we do for a living, that we're the only ones who feel this way. I think I think there's a lot to be said about having too much content. It's why Quantumania, I think I had a problem with it, because there's just it's too much. We have too much access to things.
And I think that's kind of made that issue, like we've been running up to that for a while now, but I think that's what's made that even worse is now all these projects across entertainment, like not just movies and TV. And not that there are specific projects necessarily, I think a lot of it's coming out, but we're backed up with the pandemic of things not coming out or productions being sort of stopped. And so I think this year in particular, when you look at the calendar, whether it's movies, TV, video games, whatever, there's a lot that's all coming out this year, and it's even worse than it might normally be.
I do want to push back slightly on that, because I guarantee that there are people out there who this season premiere of Mandalorian was like Christmas morning for them.
I'm not saying
they had
it's
it
not
circled on their calendar. Yeah. They were dying for new content from that. There are people who are invested in the Star Wars universe. They might not even pay attention to Marvel. They might not pay attention to Shazam. They might just say, you know, Star Wars is coming. It's a not a problem of our industry, but we have to be plugged into a lot of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But there's a ton of people who can just pick and choose what they want to watch. Yeah. And wait for the things that they are super excited for, and they probably knew it was here. Speaking of along those lines, we have a third Creed film.
I mean, the ninth film in the Rocky franchise,
and we're gearing up for the 4th John Wick and the 6th Scream. So it's going to be a lot of sequel talk going out through March, and the 2nd Shazam. I did not get to see Creed 3. I lumped Creed 3 into something.
65 movie.
Yeah. Wait, if I haven't seen 1 through 64, will I be caught up?
Screwed.
Be so lost.
Screwed. How long is John Wick for?
It's 2:45.
2 hours and 40 minutes. 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Yeah. Someone told me the other day that it's like if you could imagine John Woo's Hard Boiled and The Killer having a baby, this would be this movie. And I'm like, that might be the best description I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, I'm going.
Kev, keep going and dive into Creed 3, because I didn't get a chance to see it. And you said, I'll steal your thunder for you. Best Creed in the trilogy.
I said it's my favorite of the trilogy. Yes.
Favorite. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, and what Sean's referring to is what I said to Michael B. Jordan when I walked in the room. I said it's my favorite of the 3. And I mean that 100%. And Jake and I have a differing opinion on this. But first of all, I walked into this film excited primarily because of Jonathan Majors. I'm just really kind of hyped on him right now. Everything from Last Black Man in San Francisco to going forward with Defy Bloods, and obviously everything he's been doing with Devotion and Quantumania. He's just a really exciting actor, but also someone that I think
he has a movie called Magazine Dreams coming out later this year that everyone I've talked to said Ant-Man and Creed 3 are just the appetizer to what he delivers in Magazine Dreams coming later this year. I can't wait. So
I mean, if his performance in Creed 3 is an appetizer, then I want that full meal right now, because that performance, his performance in Creed 3 is outstanding. Like it's one of my favorite performances I've seen in a long time. There's something unhinged about it, but also grounded in an emotional way. For people who aren't familiar with the storyline, basically Dame, his character, and Adonis were friends growing up. Dame was a boxer and went away to prison for many, many years, comes back, wants a title fight, and it follows the beats of what a Creed film or a Rocky film does. Sure, that is an accurate statement. We're leading up to a big fight. That is not something that is inaccurate to say. That being said, it's the content for me that led up to it that I thought was the most interesting. The fights were incredible. And it's the first sports movie to ever be shot on IMAX. I haven't seen the IMAX version yet, but he does go to the 1:9 ratio. If you do see it in an IMAX theater, it will expand during those scenes.
For when? For the fights, you think?
Yeah, I believe so. I know for the final fight, I don't know other scenes yet. I'm assuming it's the main fights. I haven't seen that version yet, but it is the first sports movie to ever use those cameras.
That's cool.
Which is really cool. And so one of the things I will give Michael B. Jordan credit for, this is a really tough task as a filmmaker, and to lead your film and to deal with all the weight training and staying in shape, but also directing.
Stallone did it. Stallone directed a bunch of the Rockies.
I'm not saying Stallone didn't do it. I'm just giving my opinion. Yeah. I think Michael B. Jordan is one of the most talented people working right now. Go back to The Wire. But when I saw him in Fruitvale Station, it changed everything for me. I was just so blown away by what he did emotionally there. And so to see these performances throughout the years from Killmonger and then going here, he finds a way to play people in such a really special, grounded way that you can relate to it, even if you've never lived that life or never been in that person's shoes. I feel like I am when I watch his performances. Like, I understand Killmonger. I understand why he's doing what he's doing, because Michael plays it with an empathy that's just so fascinating to me. With this particular film, it's the dynamic between him and Michael and Jonathan Majors. They're just outstanding together. There's a great clip that's been shown everywhere where like he walks up to Jonathan Majors as Jonathan's standing on his car, next to his car, and he's like, why are you standing on my car? And there's a way Michael approaches that scene, which is just it's so interesting and so fascinating when he realizes who he's talking to. Another thing I love about this film is Tessa Thompson. I think she's outstanding in these movies. The daughter they brought in, Mila Davis Kent, I believe is her name. Outstanding performance from her character. She's a deaf actress who actually plays a deaf character in the film. It's awesome. Really interesting how they interwove that into the story. Felicia Rashad is outstanding. I love her in these movies, and she has scenes in this film that I think are some of the best of the franchise. The fight scenes are outstanding. Some of the most incredibly shot boxing I've ever seen. It got to a point where I was sitting in the theater, I felt like I was watching a pay-per-view. Like an actual pay-per-view. Like I thought that I somehow logged on to a real live pay-per-view fight and I was watching it. Like I was so hyped for the Damian and Adonis fight that I was like, it felt like I was like leading up and waiting for it to happen. I couldn't wait for it to happen. And it delivers. The training montage is one of the best that they've done in the Rocky franchise. There's a shot in the training montage where Jonathan Majors is crawling up these ropes in midair and then does push-ups or pull-ups on the ropes. And he is so disturbingly big in this movie. It's shocking. But emotionally, to me, the fights are great. Emotionally, this is where the film delivers. I think there's aspects that they deal with bullying in the movie that I thought was really fascinating, with his daughter going to school and Adonis dealing with this idea of physically fighting back versus Tessa's preference of the emotional aspect of standing up for yourself. And then you just have this battle of your past and like the things that we shove down and the things that eventually always come back up in our lives and if we don't deal with them. And I think that's what's kind of the story and the thematic of what Michael's dealing with here. I thought it was outstanding. I just felt something. And I told Michael B. Jordan and Jonathan Majors this when I left the rooms. Thank you for making me feel something. Like I just genuinely felt it. And I won't go into
a star rating.
I'm at 4.5. 4.5 out of 5.
4.5. Okay.
I love this movie. And I don't think I'm the only one. I'm not a Rotten Tomatoes person, but I think it has like a 91% of Rotten Tomatoes. I'm not saying that's I
saw 90 yesterday.
I'm not saying that means anything. But I do believe that this is a crowd pleaser. I saw someone say this the other day. It's a people movie. It's a movie that you sit in a theater and it's electrifying. The crowd, it's 91% with 102 reviews. I just think he's an outstanding director. And I think I'm looking at the filmmakers he's worked with. I mean, Ryan Coogler obviously did the first Creed. Listen, if you want to sit down and put these Creed 1 and Creed 3 on in film school.
The first 1 and 2, right?
No, I believe Stephen Cable. He
was originally going to do 2, but he left for Black Panther.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
So, okay, if you were to sit down in a film school class and throw on Creed 1 and Creed 3, and you were to say, like, if you were to pick apart and dive into every detail of what's a better film, you probably are going to look at Ryan's work and see a better filmmaker. And that's totally fine. It's his first movie he's ever directed. You're talking about Ryan is a born filmmaker. Ryan Coogler is a filmmaker.
He was still in his 20s, right, when he made it.
Right. And Ryan is incredible. Ryan is like a natural director, right? And like, what the work he did on Fruitvale was so impactful that directing Creed at 29 or whatever it was, made perfect sense. And there are shots in Creed 1 and oneers in that movie that are outstanding and mind-blowing. So if you were to sit down and go, what's the best?
Which one has the oneer of they follow him up into the ring?
That's Creed 1. That's Ryan's.
Creed 1. That's a
Ryan
terrific
Coogler.
shot.
Great shot.
Terrific shot.
And that's classic Steadicam. Like, and that's kind of like Rocky was like one of the first to use that technology in a way of feature storytelling. Because Stallone talks about that all the time. I loved it. I was moved heavily by it. I was also cheering. I could not. I was so in the fight, and I wasn't even watching it in IMAX. I was all in. I was very pleased with it. Great soundtrack choice. Some great Dr. Dre in there. Got some Big Sean in there. The score is fantastic. It's shot really well, and it's tight. It's not. There's nothing. There's no fat on it. I thought it moved beautifully. And like, if you're going in just for the fights, that's fine. I was more in the middle stuff. The middle stuff was, to me, what was the heart of the movie. I loved it. I was pleasantly surprised how much I loved it. I was concerned because of the lack of Stallone. And yes, Stallone is not in the film. We know that. Read up on any of the drama you want to. That's totally fine. I'm looking at the film itself as it is, and it worked for me.
Jacob, Creed 3.
So these sort of reviews for me are always fairly like boring and unsexy to do, because like, I don't dislike the movie. I'm just so indifferent and bored by it, to be honest with you. It is far and away from me my least favorite of the three. Kevin is right that these movies, as with any sports film, that it shouldn't be about like the moments where you get to see the sport played. It should be about how much you care about what's happening in between. It follows the same structure that most of the Rocky movies have followed, which just sort of felt like, again, I felt like I could have laid it out. And really, to me, these days, the only surprises that really come with these movies is like whether or not our hero is going to win or not, because Rocky goes back and forth as to whether or not our hero wins. That being said, for me, the reason that I had such a hard time is I genuinely, everything between the two fights, because there's a fight at the hour mark and a fight at the end, I just didn't care. Like, it all felt very sort of like a generic version that of a story that we've seen 10,000 times before, all sort of, put together. It's a well-made version of a movie that we've seen 1,000 times before. And Michael B. Jordan made a lot of directorial choices that makes me excited about his skill as a filmmaker moving forward. But the film that he gave me, I walked away going like, okay, like that's a Creed movie, I guess. Like, I will say that I very much felt the absence of Rocky in this, and not even so much the absence of Stallone being in the film, but this weird, what felt like a necessity to like almost pretend as if he doesn't exist and was never a part of Creed's story. The fact that like, I think maybe Rocky is maybe name dropped once in the entire film, the fact that we spend so much time in Adonis Creed's home with camera shots that pan over photos on the wall and memorabilia and history from his life and his career, and at no moment is there ever even like a shot of him and Rocky on the wall. Like, it felt like by just completely removing him from the story, it seemed to make his absence even louder and even felt more. I mean, it's one thing to like not have Stallone in the movie, but like it would have felt more organic to like at least acknowledge that like in the real world, he would have a picture of him. He would have a picture of the man on his wall. He would have something in his home that acknowledges that this man has been a part of his life. So that absence felt big for me.
What if they had a falling out in the world?
Well, then it needs to be addressed.
Yeah. I wonder, this is pure speculation because you have me curious. I have not seen the movie, and not that we can discuss, not that we have anything to contribute to the drama behind the making of the movie.
Sure.
I wonder if there's a chance where if like Stallone wasn't involved, he was like, you can't use my likeness or like. But
I thought the whole point was about like how he doesn't have enough of the rights. So I mean, does he even like know?
He's
like,
a producer of the movie.
But producer doesn't mean anything these days.
Well, no, he's not an EP. He's an actual producer.
Yeah, but that doesn't always mean.
Then it does.
Not necessarily.
Producer is a bigger deal than executive producer.
I think that producer, just because he still has some rights within
Producer's
the Rocky
a very
franchise.
gray term. Yeah,
it can mean a lot of different things.
Anyway, like I said, completely just that's interesting. It may also be whatever the feud is with may have been like, nah, we're not even.
There's drama for sure.
Though.
There's definitely drama.
Again, I thought Jonathan Majors was good. It wasn't quite the revelation of a performance that I think I was hoping to be. Everything about so much about this movie for me kind of falls into that category of like, it's good, but like could have been better, or it's good, but like I've seen it before. Like, I gotta be honest, I like Michael B. Jordan. I never thought within the Creed films that the Creed films really gave him like the meat to give the performances that we've seen him give before, like we've seen him give in a Fruitvale Station, or we've seen him give in a Black Panther. I've always thought his Creed performances were on the weaker end of his collection of filmography. So everything about that, again, it's the most unsexy review, but I just sort of walked out going like, I'll never think about this movie again. I'll never watch it again. Like I'm at a point where it's just sort of like, it just didn't do anything for me.
That's how I felt about the second one. And I don't remember any details.
Even with the
Ivan
Drago. See, I like the second one because of all the Ivan Drago stuff. Because I'm a huge Rocky IV guy. So it felt like a Rocky IV sequel.
Yeah, but like I can't even really remember the details of the fights or who kind of won or how and why sort of thing. I know he fights Drago's son, but I don't really remember the specifics or any of the stuff to sort of go into it. So I don't know. I plan to check this one out. I missed the press screening.
I didn't get around to seeing Ant-Man. Are you going to make a point to go see Creed 3 in theaters?
Yes, I feel like I'm going to go out of my way to see Creed 3 in theaters.
Dude, and see it in IMAX and let me know. I'm actually might go again. I want to see it in IMAX really bad because I want to see the IMAX footage.
Yeah, I'm around this weekend and I think I'm actually going to take some time out of my way to go check that out. So. Yeah. So I'll weigh in next week. How about that?
Did you give a score?
I'm going to give it a generous 3.
Okay. Yeah.
Exactly. Like that sound effect you're making is like, it's the least sexy kind of review. It's really fun when you hate something and you just want to rip into it. And it's really fun when you love something and you want to put it on your shoulders and carry it out. The least fun reviews in the world are the ones where you just go like,
Jake's not wrong.
When you reviewed it for the news, did you say that you gave it 3 Creeds out of 5?
All right, let's take one more quick break.
This weekend on the Blend Game.
Before our Blend Game, which is going to be dedicated to the Rocky series, which includes the Creed movies.
And the MCA. All right, we're good.
We don't have the rights to this music.
And we are back. Okay, so with Creed 3 coming into theaters, we're going to play Rocky Blend, and to spice it up a little bit, we're not just going with a traditional what's your favorite Rocky movie. We wanted to go with a scene or a moment or sequence, something about the Rocky franchise that sticks with you. And I'm going to go first because I need to cheat and I don't really care about the rules, but I have 2. I have to pick 2.
You're not allowed to. Gabe, do something, man.
It's fine.
What the hell?
Hey, the kid.
The kid gets to go 2.
You can discuss 2. Here's what I'll say. You can discuss 2, but you have to give me the one that I can put into.
Yeah, there we go. I'll allow it.
Our records, which we're eventually going to send to the Smithsonian.
All right.
Compromise.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So the one that I really wanted to choose, but I won't make it my choice, is in Rocky 3. I'm a 3 and 4 guy. I think 3 and 4 are my favorites. And there's a moment where
Stallone for 4?
For 4, yes.
It's such a great interview if you get the chance. It's incredible.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And in 3, what I love about this is that Rocky finally is starting to accept the fact that he is a champion. He has defeated Apollo after fighting him twice in the first 2 movies. And so he's letting fame go to his head a little bit. And his antagonist is Clubber Lang, who's played by the outstanding Mr. T. And it's Mr. T challenging Rocky and his manhood. And so Rocky is getting his statue revealed. The legendary statue is being revealed, and it's a big day, and it's all about Rocky. And Clubber Lang shows up and just deflates everything that's going on with him by calling him paper champion. You paper champion. You didn't fight anybody. And then in the middle of ridiculing Rocky, he just, Mr. T, and I have to believe this is improvised. He looks at Adrian and he goes, "What's up, lady? What's up, woman? Why don't you get with a real man?" And then Stallone gets so pissed that Clubber Lang is hitting on Adrian.
That's what Sean said to Michelle the first time he met her.
"Why'd you get with a real man?" And I called her ex-boyfriend paper champion. Paper champion. I think paper champion is one of the greatest insults that you could give to somebody. Paper champion. But the choice that I will go with, my official choice, is from Rocky IV, because the Rocky movies, to me, their greatest moments are not in the rings, but it's the montages that happen in between the rings. Most of them are training montages. There is a montage in Rocky IV, because Rocky IV is like excess, right? Like it's everything that works about the franchise amplified to 15. And so after Apollo gets killed by Drago, and Adrian basically says to him, like, "You can't fight Drago, you can't win." And Stallone gets in the car and races off. There's a montage set to No Easy Way Out, right? No Easy Way Out is, first off, a banger, like just a great song. Still a great song. It's just 80s cheese, and it still works really well. But the montage that is shown while he's driving is everything that happened in the first half of the movie. You just rewatch all of the scenes that you just watched. You watch Apollo showing up to the fight. You watch him dying repeatedly. It's one point where he just keeps falling to the mat over and over again.
But didn't Stallone tell you, and I thought this was interesting, didn't he tell you that like Rocky IV came out around the time of the emergence of MTV? So they basically just made the movie a collection of music videos.
Absolutely. Yes.
And whenever he told you that, I went, "Oh my God, that makes so much sense."
Yep. If you look at how that movie is cut together versus the previous ones, it is absolutely trying to appeal to a generation who at that point is immersed in songs and images coming together. And that's why there are multiple, like that movie has Hearts on Fire, which is when he's training in Russia. And it's the intercut between Drago training in the lab and Rocky training on the mountain. And then, of course, the fights in themselves. Montages are key to the Rocky franchise. My ultimate pick has to be a montage. And it's Stallone in the car racing to No Easy Way Out in the middle of the movie, watching everything that happened in the beginning of the movie, in case you forgot what had happened. So that's my pick. Kev, where'd you go?
I mean, I'm gonna be cliche. I'm sorry. I can't not pick the stairs. I feel like there's that scene, but also I think from the first Rocky, obviously. But one of the things that I'm the reason why I'm picking that is because the Steadicam became a real big staple in filmmaking because of that film. Now,
you mean running up the stairs? Running up the stairs.
Yeah, okay, that was a Steadicam shot. I mean, obviously the hands in the air. Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have clarified that.
Gotcha.
But that's whole entire sequence. You know, prior to that scene, you know, I think there was one film that may have used the Steadicam prior, but Rocky kind of brought it, in my opinion, into the forefront. It showed what you could use a Steadicam for, how you could run along with a character like that. And I think there was just something intimate and immersive about the use of that was like shocking. Now I saw that movie later in life, right? So I wasn't, you know, I didn't see it in theaters. So the impact of a Steadicam didn't make sense to me, you know, at a younger age. But as I got older, I started to understand kind of the brilliance of what that shot did and kind of what it did for audiences and kind of how it kept it so intimate and so special. And so mine's more of a technical answer, even though the moment is iconic. Yes, it is iconic. He runs up the stairs, you know, puts his arms in the air. I mean, it is an iconic like statue as you're talking about. But at the end of the day, to me, when I look back at that scene, I think about the technical marvel of it, about what they were able to do with it.
And you know what the Steadicam allows that in previous sports movies they could cheat? Is that you knew that was Stallone running. the entire time because they don't break off of him.
Right.
You know that's him running. Whereas let's say in another sort of sports movie, if you have someone training, you might cut to like a far shot. Right. And it's someone in a sweatsuit that looks exactly like him. But that's Stallone going, balls out. And the city's behind. I think the city joins behind him in part 2.
Yeah. If you go to my Twitter, I retweeted a video the other day of some of the first test footage they did for Steadicams. It's really cool. Like it's really raw, very vulnerable. Like in a very crude way. Like we didn't really know. It was such I liken it to the first time I saw Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight and saw someone use a 65 millimeter IMAX camera to film narrative storytelling. I had never, there's something about the jump in using a camera in a certain way that has then allowed the audience to be immersed in it in a film differently than they've ever have before. And it's funny because you talk about one of the famous shots of all time is the Vertigo shot, right? The dolly zoom that Hitchcock used in Vertigo. It wasn't invented for Vertigo. I think it had been used prior to that.
Sure, yeah.
But Vertigo made the shot famous because it utilized it in a narrative way that created anxiety in the audience. And obviously, years later, you get Roy Scheider doing the dolly zoom in Jaws. So I think for me, the reason I picked that moment in Rocky is because not only is it iconic for the franchise and probably one of the most famous and most memorable moments in cinema history. It's just iconic. Everybody knows that moment. But for me, it's more about the shot. It's more about how it was done and the choice of the filmmakers to actually give us that intimate moment of we go up the stairs with him. We really do. I mean, we literally go up with him. So it's really cool.
Before we get to Jake's pick, similar to Finch Facts, I'll give you some film facts segments since you bring up the Steadicam, Kevin. Invented by cameraman Garrett Brown, and the film that was initially used was in 1975 for the Woody Guthrie biopic Bound for Glory.
Yes.
It was then used in 1976 for Rocky, but also for Marathon Man, which is also another running montage filled movie.
Have you just been holding on to those facts for 250 episodes, waiting on a moment to be able to?
No,
guess what?
I looked those up. I produced the show while we're going.
Okay, well done.
Yeah.
Also, while we're discussing that moment too, as someone who constantly pimps Hustle with Adam Sandler, they have great references to Rocky and the training montages and him running up the steps in Hustle between Adam Sandler and Juancho Hernangomez. So you should definitely check that movie out.
Last thing I'll say about this, if you go back and actually watch the stair scene, I feel like this happens a lot in with films is over the years, we start to we remember the moment, but we don't actually remember the full exact thing of how it went down. Like we know the staircase scene is a famous scene in Rocky, but when was the last time you actually sat down and watched that full scene in full? And then you realize how crude and how raw it is. Like the camera, the Steadicam operator is literally standing there, and then Stallone looks like he's so tired getting up those stairs. It looks like he's struggling, and then he just goes over to the right and then runs up the rest of the stairs with them, and you're just right there with him as he's having this glorious moment. I mean, that was such a pivotal filmmaking moment. That scene is made because of that camera. It just is.
Jake, where did you go in terms of your Rocky blend?
I'm going to pick the same workout montage sequence, but for a completely different reason. Less from a technical angle, but more from just I am so beyond in awe and impressed at how much it is so ingrained into who I am as a person and my DNA, and that if I see a rack of meat hanging from the ceiling, my instinctive reaction is to go over and punch it. If I see a huge long staircase,
how often does that happen?
We literally have a meat packing district in Chicago, my friend.
That's amazing.
And that's where Jake runs in the morning before he goes to work.
I have my eggs. I have my raw eggs.
He's listening to the Rocky soundtrack.
Chases the chicken.
Yeah. And also, I see it, whether it's in Philadelphia or Rome or no matter where, I see a giant staircase. My instinctive reaction, it's so buried in my DNA, is to run up the staircase and hoist my arms in the air. When I work out, whether if you're pulling out, 5 or 6 different machines or or you're doing the dumbbells or whatever the case may be at a gym, you're kind of building your own personal montage in your head. And so to me, that's why it's my favorite, because it is so it's so much bigger than the movie now, that it has ingrained within who we are as people, that if we see those moments, those opportunities, those similar situations anywhere in the world, we put ourselves into that moment. We become Rocky for a moment. We become, we're in Philadelphia, no matter where you're at on the planet. And that's honestly, whether it be, maybe you're out on a boat and you see a shark. There's so few moments that to me that have that power over me, that if I'm in a similar situation, I instinctively do the similar action as the characters. So that's why I picked that, because no other movie in the series or no other moment in the series almost quite literally takes over my body and makes me do the same thing that the character does.
Also, let's at this moment celebrate Bill Conti. The Bill Conti score is arguably top 3 scores in cinema history.
It's iconic, man.
I'm not going to say that, but
you'd have to think about it, but I think it can get into the top 3.
It's the most iconic sports score.
What if we did a top 10 list, but you couldn't repeat composers?
That's
interesting.
No, I actually like that.
I like that a lot.
I like that.
It's interesting.
That's a great way to do it.
Because John Williams, we can't put you 8 times on our top 10 list.
He can't help that he's great.
No, I love it. That's what I'm saying.
Hans Zimmer better than John Williams.
All right, we do not have time for that.
Hot take. I'm here for it. Hot take.
Terrible.
Kevin says, I don't even want to engage when Kevin says bullshit like that. I just step back. I just step back and wash my hands of this.
Personal opinion. I think I prefer Zimmer's music.
I think Hans Zimmer would be offended by that take.
I don't care. I think Zimmer.
Composer tier list. We have to do this.
I like the idea of a top 10 list, but you can't. A composer tier list. But I like the idea of a top 10 not soundtracks.
Zimmer might be my favorite composer of all time.
Scores, but you can't repeat the composer.
I think Zimmer might be my favorite.
Picks. Jose Muniz says Rocky 2.
Munoz, I believe it's Munoz, yes.
Says Rocky 2, when he is running through the city with the kids running with him. I love it when he sprints away from them and goes up the steps. Rocky franchise is super underrated. I don't know if the Rocky franchise is underrated, right? Isn't it properly rated?
It's rated.
I think it's rated.
It's rated.
When you get a statue, you're pretty rated.
Danny Phil says Rocky 2 has the best training montage.
Does it though?
And then I think Rocky 3 has a better training montage when Apollo finally comes around and helps him train.
I have a question for you. Do you prefer Rocky losing or Rocky winning?
Losing.
Always losing. Yeah. He's got to lose.
100% losing.
Yes.
Or losing, or learning a lesson and winning.
Well,
I'm okay with that too.
Losing to Clubber Lang and then having to tell Mickey he won as Mickey's dying is rough.
Yeah.
That's a rough scene. These movies are really good.
I would argue there's only one bad movie in the Rocky franchise, and it's 5.
It's 5. Yeah, 5's awful.
But for a 9 movie series to only have one bad movie, that's pretty damn impressive.
Yes, it is.
So
because Rocky Balboa ended up being much better than.
It's not bad. It's not good, but it's not bad.
No. My problem with Balboa was I think if I remember correctly, this may have been, I could be mixing this up, around the time where digital filmmaking was starting to become a bigger deal, and they shot the main fight in some weird high def. It was like the effect. Yeah. It was like the same effect I had because I love the movie Collateral, but I don't like the way it's shot. And I think there was something in Public Enemy was another example of this, where they just didn't have video right yet. We're at a place now where video can look like Armageddon time. He can, James Gray can make it look like 35. Sure. But those movies, especially around Balboa, I remember thinking, wait, this looks like a TV show. It looked almost like too high def in a weird way. But that was also that transitionary period and going through. That's why Fincher basically waited until digital was right for him to switch, because he was filming for forever.
So this is interesting. I wonder how they did it. This is according to IMDb. It looks like it was shot on video HD, but also 35 Kodak Vision 2.
I think 35 was the movie, and then I think they shot the fight in video. I think the bit, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong. I think the bit was, I think the way they designed it was that it was supposed to look like you were going into a pay-per-view, like you were watching I don't know how to explain it.
Maybe a little creatively, a little ahead of its time.
But the jump from the 35 to the digital was so jarring. Yeah. It was almost like too jarring. I could be botching that, but I think I have that right. But
yeah. One last one. Sebs says, I'm really not joking when I say that it is the "Yo, Adrian, I did it." One of the most quotable movie moments of all time, which I think is a fantastic line. It's just incredible. Thank you everybody for participating this week. Look forward to next week when we are playing #ScreamBlend. So let us know your pick via email.
Wait, is Scream out next week?
Yes, it is.
Oh my God.
March,
and I will highlight.
March 10th.
We want to do the same. Scream moment across the franchise. So moment or scene. Yes.
Okay.
I think you're muted if you're talking to it.
I do kind of want to
say that's a good idea. We should do moment.
Yeah.
I want to do it
because there are several that come to mind.
I want to do what Gabe
the franchise, but
I like Gabe's score idea.
I do like that.
Oh, because I think it's a terrific idea. What?
I think
you gotta be here to defend your boy.
I know he deserves a majority of the slots.
Yes,
but otherwise, we're gonna pick.
But that's just different. That's a different list.
But all Gabe is doing is making a blend game with 10 slots. So it's like we have to choose the best Williams, best Zimmer, best Horner, best.
But again, exactly. These are the parameters that I'm pitching.
It's fun.
It's the top 10 best scores, but you can't repeat your composer. So.
Correct.
That makes it a little bit different where you're not going, okay, here are 10 composers, what are their best, and we rank them based on who they are. It's you're saying this is the best
have to be in there. Like John Carpenter has to be in there.
If you get to 10,
has to be in there for Halloween.
Yeah.
Maybe
I mean, we can easily find 10. And Ludwig Göransson's going to be in there. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be. I like this because
we're not going to get past Zimmer because Kevin's not going to let Interstellar go.
Well, what Williams
that is
won,
his best score.
I honestly don't know what Williams won. We would
That's the beauty of it, though.
The answer is Jaws.
Best score ever.
You think Jaws is better than Star Wars?
Yes.
Oh, I don't agree.
We've had this discussion.
Superman.
We're talking best, and again, I cannot emphasize the fact that like it is a score that if you were to go to anyone on the street, anyone in the middle of Times Square, and whistle two notes, they would know what it is.
Yeah.
People would know Star Wars more than Jaws.
No,
yes, they would.
Wrong.
In two notes. Wait. In two notes.
The opening of the Star Wars theme is more famous than the Jaws theme.
You can't even get the opening in.
More people casually like whistle or sing the Jaws theme when they're playing at a beach or in the pool.
Okay.
No, they sing it. They say Jaws.
Yeah. Jaws.
Jaws.
I think, Jake, I can't believe I'm saying this. I think you're sleeping on how big of a deal the Star Wars theme is.
I don't think
it's Jaws.
It's massive, disturbingly big.
I'm not discounting the power of the Star Wars scores collectively as a whole, but
Evan's
none of them.
Arguing Munich.
God's sakes.
I mean, Star Wars is pretty big deal. I mean, I would.
Jaws is like it's not like it's one of his lesser scores. We cannot begin this debate at the end of the episode.
There were more Star Wars movies. And there were more opportunities to hear that theme.
I think that's the argument that Jake's making. It's more effective in fewer notes, and therefore it's easier to recognize.
Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves because next week is #ScreamBlend. So please focus on ScreamBlend and not the Composer Blend, which we're going to get to eventually. Our next premium episode,
wait for that,
which drops on Monday, is the box office game, which is always a lot of fun. Check the description below for more information on how to sign up. I'm telling you guys, you're going to want to subscribe to the show. We have some really, really fun interviews coming up. For some of the major films that are coming out in March, and we are efforting for some bigger things as the year progresses. This is going to be the year of Real Blend, as opposed to the previous ones up to this point. They were warm-ups for the things that we want to do this year. Phoning it in 100%. Yes, Gabriel.
The final tease for next week. This is our last show before the Oscars next week, which means we are doing our awards predictions. I want you three to prepare.
The Oscars haven't happened yet?
And I want the audience at home to prepare.
Yeah. Is Cocaine Bear eligible?
How have the Oscars not happened yet?
Because the system is deeply flawed. It's really broken. Follow us on social media at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, at Sean_O'Connell, at Gabe Kovach, and the show is at Real Blend. We'll be back next week with something fun and exciting and enjoyable.
Wait, we have some good guests next week.
We have a lot. We might have a bonus episode if everything goes well. It's a big weekend for us. We have a lot coming in March.
I'll say we might have a return guest next week.
Yes.
The plan.
Until then, Ghostface!
Oh, yeah. Well,
Oppenheimer!
Barbie!
Bob
Killian.
Oppenheimer!